It's always a great pleasure to come here and to celebrate the Eucharist in this very fine church. And even though its layout is simple and straightforward, it does manage to draw us very successfully into the centre of the liturgical space, to here at the altar, also at the lectern, and to the tabernacle. And its simplicity lends itself to very prayerful reflection, where distraction is at a minimum. And as a result, it's a very effective place, I believe, to gather and to worship as a community. Now, gathering together as a group or community is at the heart of perhaps nearly all major religions and faith systems, but none more so than the Christian faith. For us, gathering together as community is absolutely essential, and it surpasses all other forms of Christian prayer and worship. And the reason why this is the case is quite simple. The founder of our church, Jesus Christ, asked us on this night to gather in his memory. But not just on this night, and it's great to see a good crowd of people here from the community for this very special celebration, but he asks us to gather on a regular basis. And that's why we, as Christians, as Catholic Christians, place so much importance in gathering together for Mass, particularly on a Sunday. It's a hugely important gathering. It's what we are as Christians. It's what we are as Catholics. And we do that because Jesus asked us directly to do that. When we think about it, Jesus didn't ask us to do very much, but he asked us to do that, to gather together in his name. So not only did he ask us to gather together in his name, to celebrate the Eucharist, but he promised in a very special way that when we gather together, no matter how small the gathering may be, that he actually will be present among us. And nowhere can we experience the presence of the divine quite like we experience it here in this place during the celebration of the Eucharist. And in every church, when people gather together to celebrate the Eucharist. And we are not the only ones who are present here either. We believe in the communion of the saints. And we remember and we believe that everyone who ever lived is present with us here as we celebrate the Eucharist. So all your deceased relatives and friends, they are here with us at this point in time. This is the moment as we celebrate the Eucharist when the boundary between heaven and earth is at its thinnest. So it's very important for us to remember that. And that's why we very often remember those who are dead when we gather together to celebrate the Eucharist. Now, another word for the Eucharist is communion. And that word communion has all sorts of connotations. It reminds us of inclusiveness and of everyone belonging together. The Mass, the Eucharist, should bring us together as a community and strengthen the bonds between us. And that's why I don't like when people say, "Oh, sure, I can't go to, I wouldn't be welcome there. I don't live the Christian life, I don't live a Catholic life." As if that's all it meant to be a Catholic, that we live by a list of rules. No, what is important as a Catholic and as a Christian is that we gather together and we find support and comfort in each other. And that is what communion really is. Now, true faith, even though it can also be an intensely personal thing, begins and ends with other people together in community in the local church. We cannot say that we just worship God in our own way, in our own time. Such thinking is not Christian. Jesus wanted us to worship together, to work together, to be in each other's service. That is why he gave us the example at the Last Supper of the washing of the feet. We give public acknowledgement of our faith in Jesus when we gather for Mass, but also, very importantly, when we put ourselves out for others and are of service to other people. Now, this parish community here in Holy Family has been very faithful to Jesus' command to gather in his memory, to celebrate his presence among us, and to bring that presence back out through the doors of this church, back out into the community. Now, there's been many challenges and many difficulties over the past 40 years since this parish was set up. And those difficulties within the parish have been overcome. And we have established here a very successful parish community. But as we gather to celebrate the institution of the Eucharist this Holy Thursday night, we do so with very heavy hearts, because we have to say farewell to Father Derek and to Father Richard in just a few days' time. And they have made a tremendous and valuable contribution to building the community that is at the heart of Holy Family Parish. And I want to thank them both sincerely for that. And I pray that each one of you can take heart from the example that they give and strive to continue to do the work of evangelization by continuing to find support and to find community here in this parish together. As you know, the number of priests is dwindling in the Western world. In fact, it's rising worldwide. There's never been so many ordinations in Asia and in Africa. But here in the Western world, it is dwindling rapidly. And I suppose that has something to do with the increasingly secular and self-centred world that we live in. But in places like Ireland now, and Britain, and in America, and across Europe, the onus is more and more on the lay faithful, and people like yourself, to keep the flame of faith alive. And the way that we do that is not by preaching sermons or lamenting forever the present state of affairs, but by being, as Jesus was, of service to others, and being a person who is filled with Christian joy and hope. So on this holy night, we pledge once again to love each other in a genuine way. We pledge to wash each other's feet, to hand over our lives for each other and for the sake of the world. We pledge ourselves once again to the Eucharist, to do this in memory of the one who gave his life for us. So now, to symbolize that, I'm going to wash various people's feet here in the congregation. And that signifies the different levels of service that are in operation in a parish like this, in many different ways, in the community, in various different ways, but also within the family. When you think about it, there is so much service within the family, of different members of the family to each other. So we signify that in the washing of the feet tonight. And by this action, we are remembering Jesus' humility and his sacrifice. But we're also given an example of what the Eucharist, what Holy Communion is all about. We sometimes think it's totally focused on the altar and the bread and wine, but Jesus gave us another example, that the Eucharist, that communion, is about humble service, love, and forgiveness.